This whole row's coming out, Dale. Corporate wants the floor plan tighter by Friday. Tighter. That's just a polite word for fewer people, Greg. It's the word corporate handed me, and I'm passing it straight down the line. It always gets easier to say once you turn a man into a number first. Come on, Dale, don't make this any harder on me than it already is. I'm not the one making it hard. You walked over to my bench, I didn't go to yours. I didn't write these rules. They came down from the new owners, not from me. I know you didn't write them. Somehow that's the part that makes it worse. Who's on it? On what? The list, Greg. You've got a list. It's been in your hand 3 days and you keep holding it like it might bite you. Who's on it? There's no list. Greg? It's corporate. It's not me. The steady whine of orbital and belt sanders and the deep hum of dust extraction hoses permeate the factory.
How many? Dale? How many people lose their house so a spreadsheet looks nice? Greg flinched at that. He didn't know why Dale had said house and not job, and Dale wasn't going to explain it because the reason went back 26 years and Dale had never told a living soul. 15, Greg said, very quiet. Out of about 120, Dale nodded slowly. He picked the sanding block back up. You put me on it? The floor between them. Then went very still, machines and all. I got to turn in a cost number, Greg said. That's how they told me to build it. By cost? By cost. Your seniority, 34 years, Dale. You're the most expensive man on this floor. One of you saves me 2 of the young guys. That's the math they gave me. That's not math. Dale went back to sanding, slow and even, the way he'd done everything for 34 years. That's just a way to say a thing so it doesn't feel like what it is. He did not know that on Monday, the woman who owned every board foot in that building was going to walk through the door, and that she had spent her whole life looking for him and did not know his name. Dale Coburn was 61 years old, and he had built furniture in the Dellinger plant since he was 27. And he was the kind of man who signed his work where nobody would look. Every table, every chest, every chair he finished, he pressed a small iron stamp into the underside. His initials, DC, in a little box, down in the dark where the customer would never run a hand. Harlan Dellinger had asked him once why he bothered marking a place no one would see. So I know it's mine, Dale had said. Don't need anybody else to. That was the whole of Dale, if you wanted it in one sentence. He'd married Marion the same year he started at the plant. 34 years now. They had a small house on Cutter Street with a mortgage that should have been paid off by now and wasn't. Because 2 years ago, Marion had gotten sick. The slow, expensive kind of sick. And the treatments were the difference between having her a while longer and not, and the insurance that paid for them was stapled to the job Dale did 5 days a week on that floor. He hadn't told anyone at the plant about Marion. He hadn't told Greg. A man's troubles were a man's own. That was how Dale was built. He came in at 6, he did his work. He went home and made supper because Marion got too tired to stand at the stove now. And he did not complain, and he did not ask, and he did not let anyone see the arithmetic he ran every single night at the kitchen table with the bills fanned out and a pencil going dull. If he lost the job, he lost the insurance. If he lost the insurance, he lost the treatments. And somewhere past that, in a place he wouldn't let his mind go, he lost the house too because you can't pay a mortgage on nothing. And then Marion would spend whatever time she had left watching strangers carry her kitchen table out the front door. His table. He'd built it himself 26 years ago. It had DC stamped underneath where nobody looked. And that night, like every night, Dale made supper. Marion sat at the table he'd built and watched him move around the small kitchen. She was thinner than she'd been in the spring. They both knew it, and neither of them said it. You're quiet, she said. I'm always quiet. You're quiet different. She reached over and shut off the burner he'd left going under nothing. 34 years. I know you're quiets. Is it the plant? New owners. Everybody's jumpy. It's nothing. Are they keeping you? Who else is going to plane a curve in this town? He set a bowl in front of her. It was more than he'd given himself, and she noticed that too. Eat. You need it more than I do. Dale, it's handled, Marion. She looked at him a long moment. The way you can only look at someone after 34 years straight through the words to the man holding them up. But she let it go. Letting each other keep their small mercies was part of how they'd lasted. After she went to bed, Dale sat at the table with the bills fanned out and a pencil going dull and did the arithmetic. It did not come out. It had not come out in 2 years. He erased it and did it again anyway. Because that was what you did. You kept working the sum until the sum changed. Or you did. And 26 years back, Dale had gotten the only bonus of his working life. Harlan Dellinger had landed a big contract, a hotel chain, 300 rooms of furniture, and out of some old-fashioned largeness of heart, Harlan had cut every man on the floor a check, $4,000. To Dale, in that year, $4,000 was the sky opening up. He and Marion had plans for it. New roof, maybe a real vacation, the first one. And then, 3 doors down Cutter Street, Ray Maddox dropped dead of a heart attack at 40 and left a wife and a little girl and a mortgage nobody could carry alone. Dale barely knew them. A wave over the fence. The girl, 8 maybe, used to draw on the sidewalk in chalk, but he'd watched from his porch as the notices started coming, the yellow ones, then the white ones with the bank's name, and he'd watched the widow, Diane, come out to the mailbox and stand there too long, and he'd known the look, because his own father had worn it the year they lost their house when Dale was a boy. And Dale had never in his life forgotten what it felt like to pack your bedroom into boxes while your father wouldn't meet your eye. So one night, Dale took the check, the whole thing, all $4,000, and he cashed it, and he put the cash in a plain envelope, and he wrote one line on a piece of paper and tucked it in. This should cover what you're behind. Nobody has to know. A friend from the plant. And he walked down Cutter Street at 11 at night and put it through the widow's mail slot, and walked home and never told Marion, and never told anyone, for 26 years. He'd stood on the dark porch a second too long that night. A light had come on upstairs, and he'd frozen with the envelope half through the slot. And for one bad moment, he'd been sure the door would open, and it would all become a scene. The tears, the thanks, the debt. He'd pushed the envelope the rest of the way and gone down the steps 2 at a time and around the corner before the latch could turn. Heart going like a boy caught at something, which in a way he was. He'd done a thing he didn't want caught doing, not out of modesty, out of a certainty older than modesty. The moment his name was on it, it stopped being a gift and became a rope between 2 people. And a rope has 2 ends, and someone's always pulling one. He didn't want the widow tied to him. He wanted her free, in her own house, behind her own door, owing nobody a thing. The roof stayed old. There was no vacation. The girl who drew on the Trodart ad Satran Siu on the sidewalk got to keep her front door. And Salina, Erin Maddox was 34 years old, and she owned the Dellinger plant now, along with 3 partners and a bank, and she had bought it for a reason she had not told any of them. She'd grown up on Cutter Street until she was 8, and then her father died, and everything after that should have been the story of a family that lost its house and scattered. She'd seen it happen to other families. She knew the shape of it, except it hadn't happened to hers. Because one morning, her mother had found an envelope on the floor under the mail slot. $4,000 cash and a note. Nobody has to know. A friend from the plant. They'd kept the house. Her mother had gone back to work and clawed and held on. And Erin had grown up in the same bedroom instead of in a series of other people's spare rooms. And she had become, in the way these things sometimes go, exactly the kind of person a stranger's kindness makes. Someone who could not stop trying to find out who he was. Her mother never knew. A friend from the plant. That was all. Dellinger Furniture, everyone in town called it the plant. Some man who'd worked there 26 years ago. Diane had asked around carefully for years and gotten nowhere, because the man had done the one thing that makes a good deed impossible to trace. He'd refused to sign his name. Erin had the note still. It was laminated now, soft-cornered, carried in the inside pocket of every bag she'd owned since college. She'd read it 10,000 times. She'd built a whole life on 11 words from a man she'd never met. And when Dellinger Furniture came up for sale, failing, 63 years old, about to be gutted by someone, Erin Maddox had put together the money and bought it, and told her partners it was a smart, distressed asset play, and told herself it was that too, and known underneath that, she'd really bought it for one reason. Somewhere in that building, or in the memory of it, was the man who'd saved her, and she was finally going to find him and say thank you. She did not know his name. She did not know he still worked there. She did not know that a foreman named Greg Hatcher had just typed that man's name at the top of a list of 15 people she was there to cut. And then Sam? She came in on Monday morning with her daughter, because the school had a holiday, and there was no one to watch Lucy, and because Erin had wanted, honestly, to walk her 7-year-old through the place where her own life had been saved. Lucy was 7, which was the age Erin had almost been when everything nearly came apart, and Erin did not think that was nothing. "Is this your factory now?" Lucy asked, holding her hand, staring up at the ceiling beams. "Part of it's mine. I have partners." "What's a partner?" "People who bought it with me." "Why'd you buy a factory?" Erin looked around at the floor. The smell of sawdust and varnish. The same smell. Exactly the same. 30 years later. Because something good happened to our family a long time ago because of this place. And I wanted to give back to it. "What good thing?" "I'll tell you when you're bigger." "You always say that?" "Because you're always this size." Lucy considered that as a serious problem and let it go, the way 7-year-olds do, and pulled her mother down the main aisle toward the sound of a sander, where an old man in a canvas apron was running his hand along a tabletop like he was gentling an animal. "Hey, that's real smooth," Lucy announced, arriving at Dale's bench with the frankness of the very young. Dale looked down at her. "It's getting there." "Can I feel?" "Ask your mom." Erin came up behind her. "Gently," she said. "Don't get a splinter." Lucy laid her whole small hand flat on the wood and dragged it across, solemn as a doctor. "It's like glass, but it's wood," she reported. "That's the idea," Dale said. "How do you make it do that?" "Time, mostly." Dale held up the sanding block. "You start rough and you go finer, and you don't rush any of it. Rushing's how you leave marks." "Can I try?" "Lucy," Erin said. "It's all right." Dale set the block in the girl's hand and closed her fingers around it and moved it with her, slow, along the grain. "There, feel that? With the wood, not against it. The wood tells you which way. You just listen." Lucy sanded 4 reverent strokes and looked up like she'd been knighted. And Erin Maddox stood there watching an old man teach her daughter to listen to wood. And something moved in the back of her mind. Some tug she couldn't name. The patience of him, maybe. The way he'd said nobody has to. No, he hadn't said that. She was hearing things. She put out her hand. "Erin Maddox," she said. "I'm one of the new owners." Dale wiped his palm on his apron and shook her hand. His grip was dry and strong and careful. "Dale Coburn," he said. The name went past her. Of course it did. She'd never had a name. She'd only ever had 11 words and a mail slot. "Coburn," she smiled. "How long have you been here, Mr. Coburn?" 34 years? That's a long time." "It's all of it," Dale said simply, and went back to his sanding. And Erin took her daughter's hand and walked on down the aisle, and did not know that she had just shaken the hand she'd spent 26 years looking for. And the list was on her desk by noon. Her partners had wanted the cuts done fast. "Rip the bandage," said the one named Prentice, who called people head count and meant it. And Greg Hatcher had built the thing by cost, the way corporate told him. And there it was at the top, alphabetical inside each pay grade, the most expensive man on the floor. Coburn, Dale, Finnish carpenter, 34 years. Flag, cost. Erin read the whole list twice. 15 names. She made herself read them as names and not as head count, because she had promised herself, buying this place, that she would not become Prentice. Behind each one was a Cutter Street. She knew that better than any of them. She didn't linger on Coburn. Why would she? She'd shaken his hand that morning and thought, what a decent old man, and moved on the way you do. It was the HR file that stopped her 2 hours later, going through personnel to see who she was really cutting. Dale Coburn's file was thin, 34 years and barely a page. No complaints, no write-ups, no awards. A man who'd made no noise at all. But the hire date at the top caught her eye, because she was doing math in her head about the plant's history, and the hire date was 34 years ago, which meant which meant he'd been working at the plant 26 years ago. Aaron sat very still. There'd been 140 men on that floor 26 years ago. It meant nothing. It was the coincidence of arithmetic. She told herself that, and she believed it. And then she noticed the signature at the bottom of his old tax form. The original W-4 from 3 decades back, scanned into the file. Dale Coburn, in a small, careful, back-slanted hand. The capital letters closed at the top, the way the T was crossed low. Erin took the laminated note out of her bag. She had not looked at it at work in years. She did not need to look at it. She knew it by heart, but she looked at it now. This should cover what you're behind. Nobody has to know. A friend from the plant. Small, careful, back slanted. The capital letters closed at the top, the T crossed low. The 2 pieces of paper lay side by side on her desk. 34 years and 26 years and a whole life between them. And they were written by the same hand. N.A. She didn't move for a long time. Then she did the thing she would be ashamed of later. The careful executive thing. She checked. She pulled 2 more documents with his handwriting. She held them next to the note. She was certain by the second one, and she pulled the third anyway. Because certain wasn't the same as ready. It was him. The old man at the bench who'd taught her daughter to listen to wood. The man who'd handed over the only bonus of his life and walked home in the dark and never told anyone. The man whose name she'd never had because he wouldn't put it on the one piece of paper that would have let her thank him. Dale Coburn. And she had a list on her desk with his name at the top of it, flagged for cost, and 3 partners, and a bank who expected 15 people gone by the end of the week. And the most expensive man on the floor was the man who'd once given away everything he had so that an 8-year-old girl 3 doors down could keep her front door. Erin Maddox put her face in her hands in her new office, over her new factory, and she did not know yet that it was worse than she thought. That the man she was about to save didn't want saving, and was already quietly drowning. She went down to the floor at the end of the day. She'd meant to be smooth about it. She wasn't. Mr. Coburn, do you have a minute? Dale was sweeping his station. He always swept it himself. He didn't like leaving his dust for the night crew. For the owner? Guess I better. Can we talk somewhere? Here's fine. He kept sweeping. Something in her face had put him on his guard. She could see it. Say what you came to say. I wanted to ask you about... She stopped. She'd rehearsed it, and the rehearsal was gone. 26 years ago? Did you... Was there a family on Cutter Street? The Maddoxes? A man who died? The broom stopped. For a moment, Dale didn't look up. When he did, his face had closed all the way, like a door swinging shut, and Erin understood she'd walked Satya straight at the one thing this man had spent his life keeping locked. I don't know what you're talking about, Dale said. I think you do. I don't. I have the note. Her voice cracked on it. A friend from the plant. My mother kept it. I've had it in my bag for 20 years. I compared it to your... Mr. Coburn, it's your handwriting. It's you. You're the one who... Stop. He said it low and hard. Whatever you think you've got, you're wrong. I never gave anybody anything. I'm a man who makes tables. That's all I am. You saved my whole life. I've got a floor to sweep. You gave away $4,000. I said stop. And now he did look at her. And there was something terrible in it. Not anger exactly, but a kind of pleading dressed up as anger. You don't know what you're talking about. And you're going to make it into something, and I'm asking you not to, please. Leave it alone. Leave me alone. And he turned his back at the owner of the factory and went on sweeping his station, and Erin Maddox walked back up the stairs with her heart going sideways, having found the man she'd searched 26 years for and having been told, plainly, to go away. He wouldn't take it. That was the thing she kept snagging on all that night, sitting up in the rented house across town while Lucy slept. She had imagined this moment her whole life. She'd imagined he would be glad. She'd imagined she would hand him something, money, a house, anything, everything. And he would finally get, after all these decades, the reward the world owed him. And instead, he'd looked at her like she was a car coming at him in the dark. She called her mother, who was 60 now and lived 2 states away. Mom, I found him. The man from the plant. There was a long silence on the line. You found him. He still works there. Mom, he's on a list. A layoff list. I own the place now, and there's a list, and he's on it. And I went to tell him, to thank him. And he denied the whole thing. He wouldn't take it. He told me to leave him alone. Her mother was quiet a while. Then she said the thing Aaron would think about for a long time. Of course he did, Diane said. Aaron, a man who signs a gift, a friend from the plant, and disappears for 26 years. That's not a man who wants a thank you. That's a man who'd be humiliated by one. You go at him with gratitude, you're taking the one thing he did purely, and you're handing him a bill for it. A pause. If you want to honor what he did, you can't do it to his face. He didn't do it to ours. And Lucy was supposed to be asleep. She appeared in the kitchen doorway in her socks instead, the way 7-year-olds do when the grown-ups are talking low. Who were you talking to? Grandma? Go back to bed. Were you crying? A little. The good kind. Lucy climbed into the chair across from her, unconvinced that was a real category. About what? Erin looked at her daughter, 7, exactly 7, the age she'd been, and told her one small, true piece of it. You remember the old man at the factory? Who showed you how to sand the wood? Mr. Coburn? A long time ago, before you were born, he did something very kind for our family, and I only just found out it was him. Lucy worked on this with her whole face. Is he the one who gave us our house? She asked. Erin went still. Why would you say that? You said something good happened to our family because of the factory. He's from the factory, and he's nice. Lucy shrugged, the case closed. It's not a hard one, Mommy. And out of a 7-year-old, in her own plain words, the whole thing arranged itself simply, the way it never had for the grown-ups who'd spent 26 years making it complicated. No, Erin said softly. It's not a hard one. Go to bed, Lucy. She started, the next morning, to find the fairway in. It should have been simple to take one name off a list. It was not, because the list wasn't hers alone. It was a covenant with 3 partners and a bank, and the number at the bottom had to come from somewhere, and every name she pulled off she had to justify with dollars, not with a laminated note she couldn't explain. So she did it the slow way. She dug. She learned the floor. She found out, it took her 2 days, that Dale Coburn was not, in fact, the most expensive man onto the floor by any honest measure, because cost, the way Greg had built the list, didn't count what a man produced, only what he was paid. And Dale Coburn, it turned out, was the only Finnish carpenter in the building who could do the handwork on the high-end line. The pieces that sold for 4 times the factory stuff. The pieces that were the only reason Dellinger Furniture had a prayer of surviving at all. Cutting Dale to save money was like cutting off your hand to lose weight. She could prove that. That was a number even Prentice would have to look at. She started building that case, and she felt for the first time since she'd seen the 2 papers side by side, like she might be able to do this cleanly. Save him without shaming him. Save him with arithmetic instead of gratitude. The way he'd saved her with cash instead of speeches. And then, on the 3rd day, the thing she hadn't known was waiting underneath surfaced, and it took the floor out from under all of it. Marion Coburn collapsed at home on a Wednesday. It wasn't the dramatic kind. She just went gray and sat down hard on the kitchen floor and couldn't get her breath. And Dale drove her to the hospital doing 40 over the limit with his hazards on, and it turned out to be the illness doing what the illness did. And she needed a procedure soon, and the procedure was covered, barely with fights, by the plant's insurance. Dale sat in the hospital hallway that night and did the arithmetic he'd been doing for 2 years, except now the numbers had teeth. He was on a list. Everyone on the floor knew there was a list, even if no one had seen it. If his name was on it, and he'd ask Greg point blank and watch Greg not answer, which was its own answer, then, in a matter of days, he'd lose the job and the insurance, and Marion's procedure would land on a family with a mortgage 2 months behind and no bonus coming. Not this time. Not ever again. He'd given his once. He'd give it again in a heartbeat. That wasn't even a question. But you can only give away a thing you have. You can't give away $4,000 you don't own. And he didn't own it. He didn't own anything. He was 61, and he'd spent his whole life doing the right thing quietly. and here was the bill for all of it coming due at once. And there was no one to send an envelope. He didn't tell Marion how bad it was. He told her it was handled. He went to work Thursday on no sleep because missing a day now was insane. And he stood at his bench and his hands, for the first time in 34 years, were not quite steady. Greg Hatcher watched him from across the floor and looked like a man being slowly turned inside out and did not come over. Because Greg had his own arithmetic and his own boy, and his own reasons for the name he'd typed, and could not look Dale in the eye. Here is what Greg Hatcher had not told anyone either. Greg's son was 16, and Greg's son had a kidney condition that had eaten through the family's savings and then some. And Greg was one bad quarter from losing his own house. And when corporate had said, build the list by cost, foreman, and if the list is short, we'll build one that includes your name, Greg had understood the sentence perfectly. Somebody was going in the water. Corporate had handed him the list of who and made it his job to hold their heads under, and told him that if he flinched, they'd add him and his sick boy to the pile. So he'd put Dale on it. Dale, who was the most expensive, so the math was clean. Dale, who was 61 and might retire soon anyway. That's what Greg had told himself at 2 a.m. Dale, who wouldn't fight, who never fought, who'd just nod and pack his stamp and go. Greg had been telling himself a story where it wasn't as bad as it was, and the story had held right up until he'd watched Dale's steady hands start to shake at the bench, and then it didn't hold anymore, and Greg Hatcher had to go sit in his truck at lunch and put his head on the steering wheel because he had just realized he'd thrown the best man he knew overboard to save his own boy. And both of those things were true, and there was no version of it where he got to feel like a decent man again. He didn't know yet about Marion. He just knew about the shaking hands. That was enough to be starting to kill him. The board met Friday. Erin brought her case. She'd built it well. The warranty incorporated the production numbers. The margin on the plow, on the hand-worked line, the plain fact that cutting Dale Coburn would cost the plant more than keeping him. She laid it out clean. No emotion, the way you had to with men like Prentice. Prentice listened and tapped his pen and said, "It's a nice analysis, but we told the floor 15. We pull your carpenter, we're at 14, and now every one of those other 14 has a lawyer's worth of reasons why they should come off too. You open that door, the whole list falls apart. 15. Hold the line." "The line is wrong," Erin said. "I just showed you it's wrong. He makes money for us." "Then find me a different 15th, I don't care who. But the number is 15, and it's Friday. And if you can't run this without getting sentimental about the help, we bought the wrong partner." And there it was, the word sentimental. The exact word her whole life had been an argument against. She'd spent 30 years being the opposite of sentimental precisely so that men like Prentice could never say it to her. And here it was anyway. And behind it was a list with her savior's name on it, and a boardroom that wanted him gone by end of day. Erin looked around the table. She had the votes to lose. She could feel it. She reached into her bag. She took out 2 pieces of paper and laid them in the middle of the table. One was the layoff list, Dale's name at the top. The other was a laminated note, soft at the corners, 26 years old. "Before you vote," Erin said, "I'm going to tell you something, and then I'm going to ask you to do the arithmetic again, because I don't think you have all the numbers. Erin, 26 years ago my father died. I was 8. We lived 3 streets from this plant, and we were going to lose our house. The bank had the papers filed. We had weeks. My mother had nothing. I remember her standing at the mailbox like she was standing at a grave." Erin's voice was steady, which cost her everything. "And one night, a man who worked on that floor down there put an envelope through our mail slot. $4,000, cash. His entire bonus. I know it was his entire bonus because I've since seen what Dellinger paid that year. And a note. This note." She turned it so Prentice could read it. "Nobody has to know. A friend from the plant. He never signed it. He never told anyone. My mother looked for him for years and never found him, because he made it impossible to find him, because being thanked would have ruined it for him. I looked for him my whole life. It's the reason I bought this company." She put her finger on the layoff list. "I found him Tuesday. His handwriting matches the note. It's the same man, he's still here, 34 years. The room was dead silent. He's the name at the top of your list, Aaron said. The most expensive man on the floor. The one you want me to throw overboard to make a spreadsheet come out to 15? That man gave away everything he had so that a little girl he barely knew could keep her front door. She looked at Prentice. And I will not be the person who takes his. Prentice didn't have anything to tap his pen about. And that's a hell of a story, he said finally. And there was less iron in it. It doesn't change the covenant. We owe the bank a number. Then I'll cover the difference myself. Aaron said it before she'd fully decided it, and the deciding caught up half a second later, and she found she meant it. One position, out of my own share. Aaron, if keeping him breaks the number by one salary, I carry it, personally, until his production makes it back, about 4 months by my math. Put it in writing. She held Prentice's eyes. I'm not asking you to be sentimental. I'm asking you to let me spend my own money to keep a man who makes you money. Vote no on that, and you're not protecting the bank. You're just being cruel because it's tidy. Prentice looked at her a long moment. One name, he said. You carry it. It's on you. It's on me. And you find me a 15th by Monday. There isn't a 15th, Aaron said. That's the other thing. I've been through the floor. 15 was always one too many. Hatcher built the list scared, not smart. 14 is the real number. I'll show you the work Monday. She gathered her papers. We're done cutting at 14, and none of them is Dale Coburn. She should have felt like she'd won. She didn't quite, because there was still the man himself who didn't want any of it, and who could not be told most of it without turning it into the exact transaction he'd spent his life refusing. So she went to find Greg Hatcher first, because there was a piece of this that wasn't hers to fix. Greg was in the tool crib, pretending to inventory drill bits. He'd heard the way a floor always hears. He looked up at her like a man waiting to be sentenced. You built the list by cost, Aaron said. Corporate told me. I know what corporate told you. I read the email. They told you to build it or be on it. She leaned against the doorframe. How sick is your boy, Greg? Greg's face did something complicated. How do you... Because nobody puts the best man on the floor at the top of a kill list unless they're scared out of their mind of something worse. I've been scared like that. I recognize it. She wasn't gentle exactly, but she wasn't cruel. So, how sick? Kidneys, Greg said, and his voice broke on the word. 16 years old. We've been, I couldn't lose the insurance. I couldn't. If I went on that list, my boy... He stopped. I put Dale on so they wouldn't put me on. I know what that makes me. You don't have to say it. I'm not going to say it. Aaron pushed off the doorframe. Here's what's going to happen. Nobody's cutting you. Your boy's covered. And there's a doctor in the city my company's insurance plan works with for exactly this. And you're going to go home tonight and tell me his name. And I'm going to make a call because I can. And it costs me nothing. And it's the right thing. She paused at the door. But Greg, you're going to do one thing for me first. Anything? You're going to go tell Dale what you did to his face. Not because I'm making you. Because you can't work 20 feet from that man for the next 10 years carrying this. And neither can he not know. He'll forgive you. That's the hell of it. He's exactly the kind of man who'll forgive you. And you have to let him. And it's going to be the worst afternoon of your life. She almost smiled. That's the price. It's cheaper than what you were about to pay. And more than you want to. And now, Greg told him. Nobody heard exactly what was said. Over by Dale's bench at the end of the shift, 2 old men and a broom between them. People saw Greg's shoulders shaking. People saw Dale, after a while, put a hand on the back of Greg's neck the way you'd steady a young tree and say something short. And go back to sweeping. People saw Greg walk out to the parking lot like a man who'd set down something he'd been carrying uphill for a month. What Dale said when Greg finally got the whole thing out, the list, the cost, his boy, the shame of it, was this. You've got a sick kid, and you were scared. I've got a sick wife, and I was scared. Dale kept sweeping. I'm not going to stand here and pretend I'm better than a scared man, Greg. I've been one every night for 2 years. You'd never have done what I did. You don't know what I'd do. Nobody knows what they'd do until the water's at their chin. He set their broom aside. You told me the truth to my face. That's the hard part. And you did it. We're square. Go home to your boy. And that was all. Dale Coburn, who could not accept a gift to save his life, could give forgiveness away as easily as he'd once given away $4,000 and think nothing of it, and sweep his own dust into the pan so the night crew wouldn't have to. The thing with Marion, Aaron handled the only way Dale would have allowed, which was to make sure he never knew she'd handled it at all. She didn't cut him a check. She didn't send the truck. She'd learned that much. Instead, she did what a person with power can do quietly. She kept his job, which kept his insurance, which paid for Marion's procedure. And that was the whole rescue. And it looked, from where Dale stood, like nothing at all. Like the list had simply come out at 14, and his name hadn't been on it. Like the world had, for once, not taken anything. He found out he'd survived the cut the way everyone did, from a memo on the break room wall. 14 names. His wasn't there. He read it twice, standing in his canvas apron, and then he went to the bathroom and ran the water and gripped the edge of the sink and let his knees do the shaking they'd wanted to do for 2 weeks. Alone, where nobody looked, which was how he did everything. Marion had her procedure. It went the way these things go. Not a cure, there was no cure, but time. More time. The difference between a year and a while longer, bought with a job that a woman he'd once saved had quietly refused to let him lose. He never made the connection. Why would he? He'd shaken her hand once and thought, decent young woman, and gone back to his sanding. But Aaron needed him to have something. Not a reward. She understood now she could never give him a reward. Something else. Some way to close the 26-year circle that didn't put a name on it. She thought about it a long time, and then she did the thing her whole life had been teaching her toward without her knowing it. She started a fund. It wasn't announced. There was no ceremony, no plaque, no press. She simply set aside money, real money, quarterly, from the plant's profits and from her own share, into an account with one purpose. When a Dellinger worker was about to lose their home, a check appeared. Cash equivalent, discreet, enough to cover what they were behind. No application, no thanks required. No name on it. She wrote the rules of the fund herself, and at the top of the document, where a mission statement goes, she typed 11 words she'd known by heart since she was 8 years old. Nobody has to know. A friend from the plant. The first family it helped was 3 streets over, a young man with 2 kids whose wife had left and whose mortgage had gotten away from him. He found an envelope in his mailbox. He never learned where it came from. He stood at his door a long time holding it, the way Aaron's mother once had, and then he went inside and did not lose his house. Dale Coburn never knew the fund existed, which was, Aaron thought, exactly right. He'd built the church. He didn't need to know they'd finally rung the bell. And there was one more thing, and it was small, and it mattered more than any of it. On Erin's last walkthrough before she moved her office to the city, she stopped at Dale's bench. He was working on a headboard, hand-planing a curve no machine could cut. Mr. Coburn, Ms. Maddox, he didn't stop planing. Heard I kept my job. Guess I've got you to thank for the list coming out fair. You've got yourself to thank. You're the best carpenter in the building. It was always just arithmetic. She watched a curl of wood peel up under his plane. Can I ask you something? And you can tell me it's none of my business. You're the owner. It's all your business. Why the underside? She nodded at the headboard. I heard you stamp your initials underneath everything. Where nobody sees? Why not the back, where a person might find it someday? Dale ran his thumb along the curve, checking it, not looking at her. Because a thing you make isn't yours once you give it away, he said. It belongs to whoever's got it now, putting my name where they'd see it. That's just me asking for something back. A little remember me. He blew the shaving off. You do a thing for somebody, you don't hang your name on it. You put it somewhere only you know it's there. Then it's clean. A person should get to keep their own front door, Aaron said very quietly, without ever knowing whose hand held it open. Dale's plane stopped. For a long moment he didn't move, And Aaron watched him decide whether to walk back through a door he'd shut in her face 2 weeks ago, and she held very still and let it be his choice, the way he'd let everything be a choice. "You're the girl," he said at last. Not a question. "The one on Cutter Street, Drew on the sidewalk?" "I'm the girl." Dale nodded slowly, looking at the wood, not at her. "You kept it," he said. "The note? 26 years. He should have thrown it out, but there was no edge in it now. That was the whole point. No note, nothing to keep." "I know." Erin's eyes were wet, and she let them be. "I kept it anyway. I'm sorry. It's the only thing I ever disobeyed you about." And Dale Coburn, who had never once let himself be thanked, who had spent a life signing his work where no one would look, set down his plane and put out his careful, dry, strong hand, not to be thanked, just to shake hers, one worker to another. "Well," he said, "you turned out all right. So did you, Mr. Coburn." "I turned out the same. That's the trick." He picked the plane back up. "Go run your factory and keep that fund quiet. Whatever you've got cooked up. I hear things. Front office isn't as private as you people think." Erin laughed once, wetly. "How did you—" "I didn't. You just told me." Dale set the plane to the wood. "Go on. Some kid 3 streets over is going to have a good morning, and none of us are going to hear about it. And that's how it's supposed to be." A week later, on her way out of town for good, Erin brought Lucy to say goodbye to the floor. Dale was at his bench. He didn't do speeches. He reached underneath it and brought out a small thing wrapped in a shop rag, a little wooden horse, palm-sized, sanded to glass. "Made it out of the offcuts," he said, and set it in Lucy's hands. "Every shop's got a pile of scrap, but there's a horse in there, if you look for it." Lucy turned it over. On the underside, tiny, in a little box, were 2 letters. DC. "What's that?" "So I know it's mine," Dale said. "That's all? Nobody else has to?" Lucy studied the horse, and the old man, and some large idea moving just past the edge of her understanding, and did the only sensible thing, which was to hug him around the leg. Dale patted her head once, awkward and gentle, and went back to his plane. And Marion found out, eventually, the whole story. The bonus, the envelope, the girl, all 26 years of it, because Aaron told her gently at a kitchen table Dale had built with his own hands, with his initials stamped underneath where no one looked. Marion cried, and then she laughed, and then she looked across the table at the man she'd been married to for 34 years and said, "You gave away our roof money and let me think we just couldn't afford one." "We couldn't," Dale said. "After. Dale Coburn. It was mine to give," he said. The same thing he'd have said any of the 10,000 days between. "A person should get to keep their own front door, Marion. That family got to keep theirs. We kept ours. Everybody kept their door. That's a good outcome all around." And that was as close as he ever came to admitting he'd done something extraordinary. That's a good outcome all around. Before he got up to put the kettle on, because Marion got tired now, and the tea helped. And there were still, God willing, a good many evenings left to make it. Somewhere 3 streets over, a young father held an envelope he'd never be able to trace, and stood in his own doorway and did not have to leave it. He'd never know the name. That was the design. That was the whole, entire, quiet point. A person should get to keep their own front door, and the best hands that ever hold it open are the ones you never see stamped underneath down in the dark, where only the maker knows they're there.